Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's me again, Paul Nixon. I'm back with another webinar today on your ancestors' military photographs. Subject close to my heart. There's quite a few slides to go through. Here's some I did earlier to coin a phrase from Blue Peter back in the 70s. Some cards from my collection, which I bought and then laid out on the carpet and photographed some while ago. I've given this presentation a few times now, so apologies in advance if any of you have already seen this, but I have added a couple of new slides as well for those of you who have, but let's go through it anyway. So what we'll be looking at, where to find photographs, how to read photographs, and there's a lot you can read on photographs, and improving your chances of success at finding a photograph of your military ancestor. The thing is, millions of photographs, as we all know, will have been taken of soldiers over the years. It was never part of the attestation or enlistment process, and so the vast majority of the photos that we find today were taken privately. You know, men going into studios, posing with friends. Particularly when we think of the First World War, and we think of the military generally, or the army. Certainly, it was never a chosen career for many. In fact, it was viewed as not a particularly savoury career by many, for that matter. It's Kipling's Tommy this and Tommy that. All very well, all well and good when the soldiers needed, but don't let him into a pub, don't let him into a music hall, because he's going to cause a fuss. So, for many men to suddenly find themselves in khaki in the First World War was certainly a novelty, and many lost no opportunity in having photos of themselves taken. So what we find are photos reproduced as cabinet cards, as carte de visite, postcards, prints, some images published in newspapers, regimental chronicles and books. And there's a lot published in many sources. So I'll show various examples of this in the presentation. Just before I go any further, though, I should say I'll happily answer questions later, not at the end of this webinar, but I will go back and look at any comments you have. So please post them. And I should also say hello to folk. I don't have the Findmypast Facebook screen up in front of me now, but I know that people regularly tune in. So thank you for tuning in. I should mention Graham Thompson, who I have corresponded with over many months. Graham, if you're listening, I need to drop you a mail for that matter. But thanks for tuning in, Audrey, and others. All join in, and thank you. Your attendance is great. So you stand more chance of finding a photo if your military ancestor fell into the following categories. Recipient of the Victoria Cross. Not many of those of us will have family members who received the Victoria Cross, but a lot of Victoria Crosses have been awarded over the years, and those men were well documented. If an officer was killed in action or died during the service of his country and he went to a public school, there's a possibility that he might appear in a privately printed memorial volume that the school issued. And there's plenty of those. If you look online, you'll see them. You'll see some on Findmypast as well, for that matter. Harrow School is one. The officers who lost their lives, their photos and biographies were published in a multi-volume set from Harrow School. So a dead officer per se as well, he didn't necessarily need to go to public school, but certainly in the early years of the First World War, and the Boer War for that matter, you'll find officers' photos printed in publications such as the Graphic and Illustrated London News, etc. So you stand more chance if your ancestor was a dead officer. A dead other rank gallantry medal recipient, those men, photos may often appear for those men as well. For the First World War, de Rouvenier's Roll of Honour has, I think, 25,000 entries and around 7,000 photos. It's a very good source for men who lost their lives in combat, those entries being submitted by their relatives. Some newspapers, more than others, published photos. I know I've given a talk in the past on the Essex Chronicle newspaper and on the Kitchen brothers, I think their name was. I found photos of two brothers there who served in the Boer War, lengthy articles about them and photos of them as well. And then finally, officers and senior NCOs who were original members of an expeditionary force battalion or New Army battalion, and who may have appeared in group photos. Again, at the end of the First World War, and even during the First World War for that matter, there were lots of volumes published, which showed men in their platoons. So I'm thinking of the Manchester City Book of Honour and the Birmingham City Book as well. Those
Hi,
books.
Paul. It's Ellie here.
Ellie?
Just a very quick one. Hello, everybody. There's a slight problem with your screen share at the moment. I'm wondering if you could try it again for me. So when you share it, can you actually, if you go onto Slack, if you just mute your Slack notifications and then share the screen again, that'll fix it.
Okay, all right, let me do that.
Thank you. I'll stay on here and I'll natter to everybody while we wait. I hope you're all having a great day, everyone.
Should that work now?
Yeah, if your Slack notifications are muted, that should have fixed it. And I will add you back in. There we go. The screen's now on again. If you click hide, and then I will bow out gracefully. Ta-ta.
Well done. Thank you. Oh, did you all see that as well? Hold on. And Ellie, can you chip back in?
I can indeed. I've removed the screen share for now.
Okay, let me just delete all my other.
Bet you didn't expect to see me today, everybody.
Right, let's try that again.
Okay, I'll add that.
Let me just go back to my. Yeah. Hang on, Emily, just 1 minute.
No worries. Take your time. Daphne saying I'm looking sunny. Thank you very much. I'm in my little office space with no windows and no natural light.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, let's try again. Okay. If there are any other problems, I'll hop back in, but I think we should be okay now.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, and we're back. Right, thank you, Ellie, for chipping in. Hopefully there'll be no more interruptions from, you're always welcome to interrupt, but from pop-up messages, etc. So let's move on to the next slide. So tools of the trade. I always have with me reference, plenty of reference collected over the years. There's plenty of reference online for that matter as well. And again, I should say, I don't regard myself as necessarily a photograph expert. I'm interested, and I have, but I rely on others as well, you know. And thankfully, there's plenty of people out there who are very willing to share their time and their knowledge. So a couple of Facebook groups I go to quite a lot. One is Soldiers of the Queen, run by a chap in America called Edward Garcia, very knowledgeable, and he has some very knowledgeable contributors as well. And the Victorian Military Society is another one. Again, some very knowledgeable folk on there. The Great War Forum and WW2 Talk cover the First World War and the Second World War respectively. And again, there are some knowledgeable folk on there. In terms of actually looking at photos and picking out the points that matter, if you've got a photo in front of you, here's the old traditional method, isn't it? A magnifying glass or what they call a linen counter. I have those. I've got them on the shelf behind me. Very useful. Take those to antique fairs if you're going there and have use those to look at things when you're there. But of course, you know, these days you can also take photos with the phone and then enlarge that, and that's what I would recommend. So this is the enlargement on this one here, on this cabinet card. I've just enlarged his collar and his epaulette on the shoulder, so you can see there that this man's from the Gloucestershire Regiment. Is the Sphinx sitting on the Egypt's plinth, and you can just make out the initials GLOS on his epaulette. So he's Gloucestershire Regiment, taken in Bristol, so that fits as well. If you can, if you're scan to a high resolution, scan photos to 300 dpi or 600 dpi. If you get a good phone, or I've got an iPad as well, quite a good iPad, that the default resolution is terrific. So pre-First World War, you find for the most part photos on cabinet cards and CDV. So CDV is a carte de visite, and it's the photo on the right, and a cabinet card is the one on the left. That's bigger. So the cabinet card is about 4¼ inches by 6½ inches, whereas a CDV is just over 2 by 4 inches. I use these photos as illustrations because the man, it's the same man who appears in both. So the man who's a single soldier on the right appears in the group photo on the left with his pal. Cabinet cards widely used after 1870. CDVs used about 10 years earlier than that, from 1859. But they're lovely to have. I've got a few of these, and whilst the subject matter is great, look on the back as well, and you often find some very artistic adverts for the photographer. So looking for clues in photos, this is, I believe this was a CDV that I have. So in this photo, we're looking at things like the jacket pattern, because that can tell you when the jacket pattern was issued, when the pattern of clothing was issued. The trouser pattern, the stripes on trousers, the cloth badges that are worn on the soldier's jacket, the collar badges again, cap style and badges, the accoutrements, so that's the belt or bandoliers, any additionals to the uniforms, the location of the photographer, the colour of the jacket, colour of the trousers, and finally, don't forget to check the back of the photographs, because in some cases you might find that the soldier's name or regimental details are recorded on the back. So here, in this case, this man's pattern of uniform identifies him as being in the army between 1881 and 1902. He's got a thin stripe along his trousers. So infantry had a thin red stripe. There's blue trousers, thin red line along those. Artillery and engineers had a thicker red stripe along the trousers. And he's wearing a good conduct chevron, which was awarded after 2 years. That's the white chevron you can see on his lower left sleeve. He's from the Leinster Regiment. That's the collar badges tell me that. And there's also the badge on his hat as well, on his cap. He's wearing the Slade Wallace belt. The photographer location is W.H. Jacob, who's based in Sandgate and Hythe. And he's got blue facings. You can't necessarily see that on the card here, but if I was to zoom in, you'd see that there's pointed cuffs on there, and there's different colour from the jacket. So Sandgate and Hythe, there was a musketry school at Hythe. So is it possible perhaps that he was attending the musketry school? I don't know. So as I say, colours and facings are important, and we'll go through 3 examples here. So on the left, you have the King's Royal Rifle Corps, who's green jacket and scarlet facings. In the middle, you've got Lincolnshire Regiment, scarlet facings scarlet jacket and white facings. And then Royal Sussex Regiment, the Royal here is the clue, scarlet and blue. So Royal Regiments wore the blue facings. So just to reiterate, Royal Regiments have blue facings. So the card on the right, you can see that man is from a Royal Regiment. And this photo has been colorized. So there's the scarlet jacket and the blue facings there. English and Welsh line infantry regiments have mostly white facings, and Scottish regiments have yellow facings. Irish regiments have green facings, except for those which are Royal Regiments. And the Rifle Brigade and the King's Royal Rifle Corps wore green jackets, trousers, and then black or scarlet facings, depending on the regiment. So those are important. Of course, as I say, all these photos, or the vast majority, are black and white. So you have to, it's very obvious to see which is an English regiment or the white facings, but not necessarily always obvious to see what the colour is on those regiments who don't wear the white facings. And I should also mention that some facings did change over years as well. So it's worth just double checking what the time period is that you're looking at. So here's an example of men wearing different facings. This photo was published in a Boer War book, actually, which I also have. But I bought the photo on eBay some while ago. There's a little bit of damage there on the right, which you can see. But it says at the bottom, on my copy anyway, Shropshire Regiment on board SS Malta. But actually, when you look at it, there's far more men than just the Shropshire Regiment. I've identified several badges on there. You can see the KSLI, King Shropshire Light Infantry, is the one in the middle there. But then you've also got, there's one of the KSLI men indicated there, but you've also got the King's Royal Rifle Corps, or the Rifle Brigade, and you've got the East Lancs and the Northumberland Fusiliers as well. So there's 4 different regiments there. This man here, you could see the Rifle Brigade shoulder title. You've got the Northumberland Fusiliers shoulder title on this man, and he's also got a good conduct chevron. And there's his jampot, what is typically known as the jampot cuff on his left arm. The paper there is Pearson's Weekly. You can make that out quite clearly, which was first published in 1890 by Arthur Pearson, who later Sir Arthur Pearson, who went blind later in life and during the First World War founded St Dunstan's. And I wanted to see if I could identify which publication that was. Pearson's Weekly we have on the British Newspaper Archive, which you can also access on Findmypast as well. So I looked through the covers for Pearson's Weekly for that time period. I thought it was probably 1890s, late 1890s. So I started looking through. And it's actually the week ending the April 30th, 1898. So it's a good question. I've not sort of got to the bottom of the answer. It does appear in this photo does appear in the Boer War book that I mentioned earlier, and implies that the soldiers photographed were travelling on their way to fight the Boers in South Africa. But yet, well, they could be, I suppose. This man could be holding up a very old copy. They didn't start sailing till October 1899. So if that was the case, then this magazine, this paper, had been knocking around for over a year when the photo was taken, if they were in fact travelling off to South Africa. The other option, of course, is that the photo was taken at a completely different time. But anyway, there's the evidence there. So what appeared to me to be a mountain on the original photo was in fact this lady's hair, but it's definitely the same issue, week ending April 30th, 1898. So here's another couple of clues or tips to pick up from here. So there you go. There's the East Lancashire collar badge on that man. He's a drummer as well. He's got the drum on his right shoulder. This man, he's been in the army for at least 6 years because he's got 2 of those good conduct chevrons. So 6 years service. The qualification changed in 1906 from 6 years to 5 years. And he's a lance corporal, this man sitting down, because you can see his lance corporal stripe on his upper right shoulder. And that's what it looks like in colour. So you can see there, you might look at the photo casually and you might just sort of pass it and go on to the next photo. But if you study it, as I say, you can see straight away that you've got blue facings, white facings, and the man in the middle is the Rifle Brigade with the green. Those colours may not be absolutely true, but that's how it could look colorized. So going back to our man at the start that I was talking about, you've got the Loyal North Lancashire Regiment, again identified by the collar badges, and you can see on the right hand side there, that's that from this illustration, the collar badges as well, and there's an actual representation of the badge at the top. The cross swords show this man's a sergeant instructor in gymnastics. Sergeant stripes, of course, are very clear on his upper right arm. The man that he's talking to or standing with is an other rank. He's a private. He's got the crossed guns for the Marksmen, and he's got 2 good conduct chevrons just below that. This man here on the left has got the jampot cuff. So the photo on the left is earlier than the illustration on the right, which deals with a later period. And you can also see here on the man on the right that he's wearing 2 Boer War campaign medals as well. So there you go, the difference between the cuffs. You can see the pointed cuffs on the right, 1902 to 1913, and the jampot cuffs, a previous period. And both of those men, both the men in both those depictions there have got a thin red line along their blue trousers. As I mentioned, campaign medals to data photo. So here again is another one. Royal Sussex Regiment, a tale of 2 sergeants. On the left-hand side here, red jacket, the red sash, the blue facings, jampot cuffs. That can only be to between 1881 and 1902. The man on the right, red jacket, red sash, blue facings, cuffs are not visible, but the white piping around the shoulder straps dates to between 1902 and 1913. In 1913, shoulder straps were changed to all white. And the first Royal Sussex Regiment was stationed in Rawalpindi on the northwest frontier between 1911 and 1913. So the photo is likely to have dated from there. Note the braiding around the collar on this man's collar as well. So as well as these cabinet photos and CDVs, you'll also find, as I mentioned, photos published in various publications. This photo was published in a fairly rare these days book called which dealt with the 2nd Battalion of the Scottish Rifles, the Cameronians, when they were based in Malta in 1913, and it's essentially a photographic journal of the men. You have photos of them on parade, you have photos of the officers all named, and then you have photos of the different companies of men, machine gun section, band, etc., etc. This is the only photo where the men are named, and so if your ancestor, again going back to my earlier slide about more chances of finding somebody if they were an officer, this is a good case in point. So these men are all named, and it means that you can then put a face to a name on a medal index card, on a medal roll, on a service record, because there they all are. Whereas this one, which is C Companies, is from the same book, 2nd Scottish Rifles. It's unnamed. The men are unnamed. But you know, if you knew who your ancestor was, what he looked like, then it's a case of trawling through here again, taking a copy of this book to a high resolution, which I have done. I had the book and have sold it on since, but I have the high resolution scans already. So at some point, you know, if I were to come across another photo of a man in this battalion who I knew was a regular soldier, then I could, with a bit of patience and a degree of good fortune, I suppose, find him in this photo. But looking at that straight away, you can see it's always the same sort of setup. Senior officers at the front. So the most senior man will be in the middle, and then you've got other officers and senior NCOs typically to the right and left. You've got the bandsmen there as well, and the men artfully arranged. Regimental chronicles. I've written an article fairly recently on the importance of regimental chronicles. They can be a great source, and I've been lucky enough to own runs of many chronicles over the years. This is from the Rifle Brigade Chronicle, which you can find on Findmypast, all digitised from 1890 up to 1920. So search for Rifle Brigade, go to All Record Search, Rifle Brigade, and they've all been OCR'd. So if your ancestor served in the Rifle Brigade between these years, 1890 and 1920, have a look for them on Findmypast. Just type in the name, type in your search reference. They're a mine of information. You'll see photos like this, but you'll also find accounts of when the battalions were stationed overseas. So, for instance, if your ancestor was in the Rifle Brigade between, let's say, 1895 and 1902 in the serving with the colours, and you know the battalion he was with, you can find out where they were, what they were doing. There's narratives, there's letters to the editor. Normally, you've got the details of the officers. You'll find colour sergeants mentioned as well. If you know which company was here, you'll know which colour sergeant was responsible, etc. So there's full of information. And if your man was an officer and he died in service, then you might find his photo as well. So you can see here in this one, Lieutenant C.H. Dillon, wounded 1st of June 1901 during the Boer War, died a week later on the 8th of June. Again, postcards, plenty of postcards. Find them on eBay, find them in antiques fairs. This is from Tuck's Oilette series from 1902. You've got men from here anyway that I've illustrated. Northumberland Fusiliers on the left, Scots Guards, rendered here as Scotch Guards, but Scots Guards in the middle, and the Sherwood Foresters on the right. Unfortunately, the men are not named, but some of these senior men are identifiable. I can't remember whether I identified the man in the middle, but it should be fairly easy to identify him. Scots Guards, Sergeant Major. There will be other photos of him, and I might well have already identified him. I can't remember offhand. Boer War veteran again, so that's going to narrow it down. He's got his Boer War medals. They're all wearing medals from the Boer War. So, and you can see again on the left different colour facings. Having mentioned English regiments mostly white, well, you've got Northumberland Fusiliers with the Gosling green, so he's got green facings on his jacket. And again, Gale and Polden postcards, very useful. You can see there that top illustration, thicker red stripes on those men's trousers because they are Royal Garrison Artillery and Royal Engineers, and they wore thick trousers with the thick red stripes, whereas the men on the right hand side, the Scots Guards and the Cheshire Regiment, have got thin red stripes. Newspaper obituaries carry photos of men as well. So you've got there the London Gazette. Is it London Gazette? No, it's not. It's the Illustrated London News, the Graphic, and the Manchester Evening News. So they're carrying reports of, on the right, Henry Sherratt, who was killed in action on the Somme. He's killed. He's mentioned in that small article there, leaving a widow and 7 children. So there you go. If that was his, if he was your ancestor, you'd be very pleased to see that. Find that in a newspaper. He's reported there in the newspaper as a Grenadier Sherratt. You've got his service number there. That's taken from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and the information there is from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission as well. Volunteer force, you won't generally find volunteer force records on Findmypast, but you do see volunteers in photos, and this man is clearly a volunteer by this Austrian knot on his sleeve. You've got the lozenge and you've got the star above the Austrian knot. So the diamond was awarded to volunteers who returned as efficient in rifle drill and practice in the last annual return of their corps. After 5 years as efficient, later after 4 years, the star was awarded. So this man has been a volunteer for at least 5 years. And on photos, make sure that you look for even the smallest clue. So this photo here on the right, on the left, which was sent to me by somebody, it just shows the hint. He's a sergeant. You can see the sergeant's stripes well enough, but there's a hint of a star there above that. See that there? It's a 4-pointed star. It was to be worn above all others, it says in the regulations, by senior NCOs in the volunteer force and later territorial force. It was never worn by soldiers in the regular army. And there you go. You can see there on this illustration, the full star there. Another photo, again, I was lucky enough to pick up these two at the same time. So you've got the man here overseas, but wearing different types of clothing. On the right, he's wearing the whites, and on the left, he's wearing his khaki. And as Frank Richards said in Old Soldier Saab, on the plains in the winter, we wore the thin, fine Indian khaki. And by day, during the heat of the summer on the plains, we always wore white on parades. So this particular battalion in Lincolnshire was stationed in India between 1898 and 1910. And so these photos were taken at some point between then. King's Liverpool Regiment, again, tropics again, wearing the white. You again, happily, for identification purposes, you've got his hat on his helmet on the left, with the badge clearly seen. Look for clues on the helmets, on the collars, and on the epaulets. Probably 2nd Battalion, which was in India, Burma, and Aden between 1877 and 1894. So that's probably when that taken in one of those locations. Nothing on the back of the photo or on the mount to suggest where it was. So no photographer's marks on that one. This photo here is taken of the 5th Oxfordshire Light Infantry, and it was Oxfordshire Light Infantry at the time it was taken, rather than Oxon Bucks Light Infantry, which it later became. You've got efficiency stars there on those men's sleeves. Each star represents 5 years service, so those men have all served with this particular battalion for that length of time. You can see the stars there, and there was a pattern. They had to be arranged, or supposed to be arranged, in a particular way, and that's why you've got that arrangement there on the right hand side. You can see the 4 stars there arranged in that particular way. The metal shoulder titles indicate territorial force rather than volunteer force, so that's important. So that dates it to 1908 onwards. And there you see the rendering of the Oxfordshire Light Infantry or it would have been the Oxford Bucks by then, shoulder title. This man here is wearing a Queen South Africa ribbon. He's a colour sergeant instructor with 3-bar chevrons and crossed rifles and a crown on his right arm above the elbow. Again, you've got the shoulder title, and this man's a colour sergeant here. And a very young officer in the middle. I don't know how old he is, but he looks very young. Second lieutenant. And you can tell that by the single mark there. Again, from the same photo, cross flag, signaller, qualification. And then, so that was taken probably, almost certainly in the UK. The Territorial Force didn't serve overseas, although the men volunteered in their thousands during the First World War and did serve overseas, but Territorial Force generally would have been in the UK. Whereas these men are all regular soldiers serving overseas. They're playing football, so you've got the details of the regiment on the balls there. And in this case, this is men of the Queen's Royal West Surrey Regiment on the right, playing part of a ship's crew on the left. I think it says HMS Perseus there, and the date of 1909. So those are great markers. You can see, I knew that this was Royal West Surrey because this photo is one of several photos in my collection. And I've got the man's medals as well. And again, on this particular photo, you've got the drum there, which if you enlarge it, you can see it says Queen's Royal West Surrey Regiment on the top of the drum, and also helpfully it does say at the bottom as well, for that matter, number 4 section, D Company, the Queen's Regiment at Doolally at the time that particular photo was taken. The same group of photos. This one is Indian Army Temperance Association medals. So you can see these men here, they're all members of the Indian Army Temperance Association. They're all wearing their medals, different medals awarded for different periods of temperance, non-alcohol. So the Queen's collar badges there. This man's Sergeant Instructor Gymnastics. And that medal there on the far left indicates 9 years of abstention from alcohol. He's got a marksman's badge as well. And his colleague to his left, on our right as we look at it, he's wearing a Queen South Africa medal ribbon. And he's a corporal instructor of gymnastics. That's what the corporal's badge is there on his arm. The men sitting at the bottom here, this man is a scout and a marksman. Distance judging badge on his right arm. And cross flags there of a signals, Lance Corporal signals instructor. Now, you wouldn't necessarily know what all these badges mean, but there is reference you can buy. There are books on shoulder titles. There are books on badges, efficiency badges, and as I say, there are helpful people on forums as well. So don't feel shy about jumping in. Many of the people who so willingly give their time are more than happy to help, and don't feel that any question is too stupid either. Everything is easy when you know it, but there's plenty of things that we won't know, and I don't know for that matter, and I'm happy to ask and to get people's advice. So, but this photo is fantastic because it has so many different badges illustrated, and so many different temperance medals as well, for that matter. Again, this man's a marksman. He's got his marksman's badge there, and he's wearing the good conduct badges as well. So 2 of those men you can see there. The men either side have both been in the army for 6 years at least, and the man in the middle has been in the army for less time than that. And there's a rendering of the Indian Army Temperance Association medals in colour. These are all up for sale at one point in time by Dix, Noon and Webb medal auctioneers, or more than that, they auction all sorts of stuff. But they do get through a lot of medals in a year, and these medals are all up for auction at one point in time, and that's the illustration. So that's courtesy of their website, and it used that reference to identify the medals worn on the photo, like the one I just illustrated. I added this slide and the next 2 or 3 into this deck. So if you have seen this presentation before, you won't have seen this photo. Again, a photo I bought some while back shows the Duke of Wellington's West Riding Regiment, men of that Regiment. They again are overseas. You can see the man sitting there on the left as we look at it. He's wearing the whites. And then you've got other members here. Not sure what the team is actually. Athletics team, possibly, or running team, possibly. But the clues here in the photo to look out for are as follows. So this man, he's the only one wearing regimental insignia. The officer who's sitting second right has got his helmet there, which is turned upside down, but he's got clear insignia on his collars of the elephant collar badge, which marks that out as the Duke of Wellington's. The man in the middle there, the sergeant instructor, or the instructor in gymnastics, is wearing the badge there. And you need to look at the crown here. The important thing is the crown, because the crowns are important. There was the Queen's crown, which you can see I've illustrated top right, and then which is the St Edward's crown, and there's the King's crown below, which is the Tudor crown. So if the man in the photo, or men in the photo, are with the crown, the Tudor crown, then it can only date to between 1902 and 1953, when then Queen Elizabeth was crowned. Anything before 1902, or before 1901, really, when Victoria died in January 1901, it will be Queen Victoria's crown, the Queen's crown, the St Edward's crown. So that's a clue. So look for, there's another clue that you can use. The 2nd Battalion Duke of Wellington's was in India between January 1898 and November 1905, and then the 1st Battalion took over from 1905. So these men are probably 2nd Battalion, circa 1901 to 1905. And I thought this was quite interesting, just looking at this chap here. I mean, I have been in contact with somebody who's made a study of tattoos in the army, and I need to send this photo to him actually, because there's some great. He's more interested in not necessarily tattoos per se, but in the tattooists. There's some very well-known tattooists who are, you know, plying their trade in the 1890s and early 1900s, and some of those men were soldiers. There's some great tattoos here. So you can see there clearly a butterfly on the left, a peacock on the right, and then on his lower arms, I can't work out what's on the left-hand side, but there's certainly an anchor there on his lower left arm. For that matter, the sergeant instructor, who I haven't zoomed in on in particular for this slide, he's also got tattoos. So moving back to cloth badges, Royal Artillery, you've got gunnery efficiency there. Man on the left has got the crossed guns with the crown above, which shows first prize, and the man on the right has the crossed guns with a star above, so star rather than the crown, which is second prize. Both men are wearing walking out dress, albeit different patterns of tunic. Those badges were awarded from 1898, it says here, so it must be true. Territorial force men these are, and the first thing that stands out immediately from those men is the Imperial Service Obligation badge above the right pockets of some of those men. There it is there. It's this little silver badge. It exists in many different variations, all similar in look, but slight variants. This man's a battery sergeant major, and the man second right is a master gunner third class. And then, as I say, you've got the Territorial Force, the Imperial Service Obligation badges as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the Territorial Force was home service only. In order for the men to serve overseas, they had to sign an Imperial Service Obligation. And you'll find that in many records on Findmypast in W0363 and W364. You'll find it's essentially the man saying, yes, I'm happy for you to send me overseas. And they all signed that before they were sent overseas. Here again, we have Royal Sussex Regiment. And again, I show this photo because it illustrates another period in time, and a much hated hat, the Broderick cap, which was worn for a short period of time between 1902 and 1905. You've got the Royal Sussex Regiment badge on there very, very clearly. Blue facings on the uniform for the pattern for 1902 to 13. But as I say, you can narrow that down a good deal more by the hat, which was only worn by the infantry at least between 1902 and about 1905. The Royal Marines and Royal Marine Light Infantry wore the hat for later than that period. And this man is also wearing the Queen's South Africa medal with 3 clasps for service in South Africa. So it probably dates to 1903 to 1905, more than 1902 to 1905. Again, same sort of period, looking at the hats. Again, that's the clue to look at straight away. Okay, you can narrow in straight away, that's that hat, that's that period. So that immediately gives you a clue. And then you start to interrogate the photo a little more. So looking out for, in this case, regimental insignia, the uniform pattern, the good conduct chevrons, skillet arm badges, medals, photographic clues, they're all there. And there are 6 regiments there as well. You've got the Black Watch on the left, then the Queen's, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, South Wales Borderers, Highland Light Infantry and Royal Scots Fusiliers, and you pick that out, that information by the badges. So again, the Queen's Regiment, very distinctive badge. You've got the lamb and flag there. Second man from the left on the back row, Royal Welsh Fusiliers, the bursting grenade on his helmet, on his hat rather, and then South Wales Borderers. So again, I happen to have this photo, scanned it at high resolution, zoom in, look at the badges, look at the medals, look at the collar badges as well. So South Wales Borderers, you've got the Sphinx there on his collar. All those clues are what you need to identify the photo. And then you can take it further after that. So looking at the good conduct chevrons there, so you can see the number of chevrons worn by 2 of those men indicate 12 years service, whereas a couple of the others have only got 2 years service. So good conduct badges were awarded for different periods of time at different stages during the life of the army, and I've put the dates in there, 1860 to 1869. That's how they were awarded. So the first one awarded after 3 years, and then after 8 years, and so on. 1870 to 1905, after 2 years service, and then 6 years and 12. And then from 1906, it changed again. So from 2 years through to 5 years and 12 years, etc. So that's important to know, to understand that, because if you have a photo, you know your ancestor was in the army, you know that this is him in this particular photo, and he's wearing conduct chevrons, you can say, okay, well, when this photo was taken, he'll have been in the army for such and such a period of time. Medals, again, more clues on the photo here. So this man on the left is wearing the Queen's South Africa medal, and the one on seated in the centre is wearing the Queen's South Africa medal as well, which look like that. Common clasps on there. I don't necessarily know these are the clasps, but the common clasps are the Transvaal, Orange Free State and Cape Colony. Those were the typical. You see those on many medals. The man sitting on the right, as we look at it, is wearing the India General Service Medal, and that looked like that. He's Royal Scots Fusiliers, and he's got 3 clasps, so it's likely to be those clasps there. I do have a group with a man who had those 3 clasps as well, for that matter. It's a lovely medal, that particular medal. Sporrans is a whole area of research on its own, and I have delivered a presentation on sporrans and been fascinated as I've been trying to work out what the sporran was and what it's telling me. This particular sporran is Black Watch, but it did change over time. Sporran designs changed over time. Highland regiments wore kilts, so too did bandsmen in Lowland regiments. Each regiment wore multiple sporrans as well, and so you'll find different types of sporran according to rank. And identifying the sporran and tartan will lead you to the regiment. So here you have, again, a man from the Black Watch, so all sorts of clues there. You've got the Glengarry, the tartan, the flashes, and the type of sporran, the cantle badge above, brass for sergeants and above, the horsehair sporran. So it's a hugely complex subject. But the thing is to pick the photo apart and look for clues. And again, as I say, you will find reference out there. There is reference, but if you're looking for instant answers, then try the forums, try the Victoria Military Society, try the Great War Forum and elsewhere. World War II Talk, WW2 Talk for Second World War. that's all well and good. I mean, and if we're lucky, we'll have photos that we can that we know that have been handed down over the years, and we know that that's Great Uncle Jack or whoever it may be. But often as not, there may not be photos of ancestors, and trying to find a photo can be difficult. It's probably easier now than it's ever been to try and find one. Having said that, because you can put messages out there. I would recommend putting messages on forums, including a message in an email signature for that matter. The idea is that you want to improve your chances of success of finding a photo. Let the search engines find the photo and come to you. And I've had some success with this in the past when I've written looking for photos. I've written on blogs that I write, and I've put messages out there that I'm looking for photos or looking for medals, and I have had some success. And because I think that photos are important and that men need to be remembered, men and women need to be remembered, I set up a website called British Army Ancestors some while ago, which about 4 years ago now, which enables people to upload photos and search records for that matter as well. And so there's a facility on British Army Ancestors to post photos. There's 100,000 photos, 100,000 plus photos, getting up to 13 million records now as well. And you can post once on that website. You can upload photos free of charge. But it does work. I've had success with this man and his family. So my grandfather's father was a Roberts, and he married a Franklin, and his wife had several sisters. And this man here, Alfred Hythe, comes from the marriage of one of the Franklin sisters to a Mr. Hythe, and they had 5 children. He appeared in the Second World War, and in the First World War. He was in the yeomanry, and he went on to be commissioned in the Bedfordshire Regiment. So he got the 1915 star, 1415 star, and the British War and Victory medals. And I promoted this on a blog, and lo and behold, sometime later, somebody contacted me and said, I've got a photo of this man. I recognize him from your blog. Here it is. Would you like the photo? And I said, yes, please. Thanks very much. And there is he, this man, Alfred Hythe, wearing the military medal, military cross ribbon on his jacket there. Same man. And then later on, somebody else contacted me and said, I've got a photo of another one of the Hythes here, and that's Queenie Hythe on the left-hand side, wearing the Salvation Army uniform in the First World War. I'm bringing this right up to date. I bought this photo a week ago. I found it in a market in Spitalfields, close to where our office is, actually, in London. And I looked at it this morning, literally this morning, and I just picked out one name, looking for an uncommon name. And the first name I came across was this man, I.F. Dallison. I thought it was an uncommon name, so I just Googled I.F. Dallison. Well, I went to Sandhurst, actually, the Sandhurst website, first of all, typed in Dallison. I could see several references to him. And then he's also written a blog post on that website. And I also found a Facebook page for Sandhurst as well, where he also appears. And there he is, later Captain I.F. Dallison, OBE-RE, and he's this date here, 3rd of January 1947. I would have thought that was the date they passed out, but it's actually, if you read his account, it's the day he joined this particular platoon, Somme Company, 3rd of January 1947. So fantastic. So those men in due course I will add to British Army Ancestors, and hopefully, the idea is if somebody doesn't know Captain Dallison and wants to get hold of him or find a photo of him, they will find him on the site, him and his fellow students as well. So there it is, British Army Ancestors, that's the website. And there you can see, in this particular case, I've got Charles Sabaran, who some of you will know I've mentioned before, and you can find his service record on Findmypast. That clicks through to Findmypast, and the War Diary clicks through to Naval and Military Archive. Thousands of photos, and as I say, clues in all the photos as well. So that's it. Good luck with your research. I hope you have success. I hope what I've had to say has been useful. If you have photos that you are trying to find information out on, that's a clumsy way of phrasing that, isn't it? If you have photos and you need help in trying to identify the clues in there, and you want to publish it on Findmypast, stick it under chat. I'll have a look. If I can help, then I'll be happy to do so. Then, for that matter, there may be other people here as well who are happy to help. So don't be shy. By all means, post it. If I can help, I will. And just remains me to say thank you for listening, and tune in next month. Bye for now.